Yeah, so maybe I should just start out by saying that we are recording this and then we'll post the video so that this is there for those who aren't able to be here tonight, but also so that we can continue to build on this session rather than repeating ourselves in the next information sessions. So. Yeah, so we've asked you to put into the chat, and that's great. So welcome everyone. And yeah, I don't know if you want to say anything on this slide, Brandon. I'll go to the next one.
Yeah, and I think just within that, so we'll have a lot of information that we're covering right now. So this will run for about 55 minutes, but we're going to try to keep it less than the hour, so to wrap up by 7. And at the end of that, we'll be transitioning into what we're calling a Cascadia campfire. And so, well, this might be a little bit rapid fire and with a lot of information thrown at people. We'd love to then, after this, open it up into a little bit more of a community session where we can introduce each other, the work that we're doing, and answer any questions. And as we're going, we might not catch all the questions, but do feel free to throw them up in the chat, and then we can try to get to them later.
So yeah, so just to introduce ourselves, I'm Claire Atwell. I'm a community artist and weaver based in Victoria, BC, in the heart of the Salish Sea, which are also the unceded lands of the Lekwungen and Wasanic speaking Coast Salish people. And I'm Brandon.
Yeah, and my name is Brandon Letzinger, and I'm here in Seattle, Cedar River watershed in the Salish Sea on the unceded lands of the Duwamish people. And yeah, I'm also the executive director of the Department of Bioregion and also a founder of Cascadia Now. And it's very exciting to be here and with all of you. So
yeah. And yeah, so the next part of the slideshow is really to kind of introduce you to who we are and how this all came about. And hopefully at the end of it, you will have a much better understanding of just orientation so that it's sort of a basic platform for where we go from there. So our design challenge was, what would it take to regenerate the Cascadia bioregion and to comfortably live within the limits of our bioregion and responsibly as part of this planet? And how do we weave the lessons coherently across many different watersheds and territories to connect the work done on the ground and already being done? How do we imagine new forms of bioregional governance while honoring and celebrating our unique stories of place? And this just kept hitting us as we were contemplating what needed to be done. So how can we empower all of our work and connect it with the resources we need for the long-term regeneration of the Cascadia bioregion? And we saw that as the design challenge.
yeah, and I think along with that, so for those who aren't familiar, Regenerate Cascadia is a pretty new project. It emerged in April is when we started thinking of it, and Claire and I were both kind of the conveners of the initial idea. And then I think since then, it's been really exciting to open it up to a community of organizers. And if you're not as familiar, our goal is really to work with organizers who are already on the land doing amazing work, and to connect and empower that work as best that we're able, and then help to fit it and grow it into a broader bioregional framework. For us here in Cascadia, that's the Cascadia bioregion. If you're not familiar with the idea, the Cascadia bioregion is just the Pacific Northwest as defined through our watersheds. We talk about using bioregional frameworks that are able to better represent the people, the ecosystems, and the place through watershed networks and in frameworks that make more sense than existing arbitrary lines. And in addition, bioregionalism can provide a really powerful framework for decolonizing and breaking down a lot of these arbitrary borders. So rather than city, state, or province, nation state, we work within the framework of watershed, ecoregion, bioregion, and then how we fit into a broader network of bioregions and bioregional movements across North America and the world.
So, do you want to go to the next slide? Yeah, so Regenerate Cascadia is a long-term vision and process that works with on-the-ground communities to design and implement new frameworks of governance, ecology, and economy for the regeneration and health of our bioregion. And we were building on a number of things. A physical bioregional activation tour happening from September 28th to October 30th, and that's the main purpose of this information session. A bioregional summit happening in November 3rd to 12th. A movement map and directory of organizations actively regenerating Cascadia. Digital infrastructure, information commons, and backend that we are creating that is replicable and scalable. Gleaning information gathered from the tour and summit via video, audio, and written materials, and the creation of shared and vision document. And long-term working groups around regenerating Cascadia and a regenerative funding ecosystem that can support their work. So the activation tour was inspired by the success of two similar events earlier this year. The first involving 14 cities around the Great Lakes, the second involving multiple communities throughout the whole Colorado River Basin. Inviting the Design School for Regenerating Earth to join us for a month-long bioregional activation tour throughout Salmon Nation is hugely exciting. Not only will this be the Design School for Regenerating Earth's most ambitious schedule to date, it's the fact that this is Cascadia, and probably one of the most active places on Earth when it comes to existing regenerative initiatives.
Yeah, and so just to be very specific in what the activation tour is we will actually be traveling around into different communities, probably with a bus or some other vehicle. And in each different stop, we're going to be working with local on-the-ground teams. And those local teams are going to be helping determine what the events are. And the whole point of the activation tour is to raise awareness of the work that's happening, connect, whether it's via strategic planning sessions or presentations, workshops, bioregional mapping sessions, but really to highlight the work that's being done, to share lessons, talk about challenges that people are having, and really to empower that on-the-ground work. This is a tentative schedule. It's not like hard written in stone right now. So I noticed that I see people from like the San Juan Islands, Lopez Island. I think that's awesome. And so if you don't see yourself on this tour yet, we're working with different activation teams that do emerge and are inviting us to come visit. So the schedule can change. We can add stops, we can remove stops. And so yeah, if you don't see your location right now, don't be disheartened. Just reach out and let's start talking about how we can plug in and connect.
Yeah, and just, I mean, I think this is quite, oh, do you want to just stay on that other slide there, Brandon?
Yes, I've realized I can't go backwards.
Oh, okay, that's okay.
So, sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, so the types of activity, so the activation tour is being hosted by the Cascadia Department of Bioregion. Brandon Letzinger is the founder. It's a 501 nonprofit, as well as local on-the-ground activation teams who will help to set the context, scale, and scope of the work. Each stop will feature community workshops, mapping presentations, problem-solving discussions, and framework development. Each activity will engage diverse audiences from schools and universities to policy leaders, environmental groups and the general public. So I mean, it'll be, you know, what the on the ground teams feel that they need. But these activations will allow every place-based group to connect with their new audiences and form long-term networks that are the interconnective tissue for their watersheds and places. Do you want to add anything, Brandon?
Yeah, I think just also, you know, the above are some like different options, but really it comes down to every different place and what you might be interested in. So that might be a meeting with, it could be a meeting with local elected city officials. It could be a strategy session of lots of different community organizations. It could be a presentation for a school. You know, and each of these is going to be a little bit different. And one of the really exciting things about having 14 different cities and activation teams is we really want to remove ourselves as bottlenecks in this process. And then, so a big part of this is also just opening this up so that people can make connections with each other. If you do want to host an activation or invite us to stop, just some things to think about is that at each stop, what we are looking for is for local teams to basically be able to help with housing and food while we're there. And then at each stop, just some best practices to think about is before we do whatever the public events are, we'd love to actually have time to meet and talk with the local organizing team in person. Maybe we have breakfast, share a meal, and really discuss their hopes and expectations. What do you want to get out of it? What are some struggles that you're having, or you know, how can we be most effective? The whole point of the tour is really to try to be of service to each different area, and to weave these kind of watershed hubs as this interconnective tissue for that area and to strengthen that work. So think about the audiences you want to reach. What are the goals that you want to get out of it? And then also don't feel like you have to fill the schedule while we're there. Some of the most powerful time can be the downtime. You know, leave space for really cool connections to emerge. So after a really exciting session, there might be a lot of excitement building, and so leave time to talk and to grow with that and meet with people who kind of, you know, maybe that we haven't connected with in the past.
And actually, just on that is the Telegram group. If you haven't joined it yet, that is one of the ways, the connecting ways, besides these information sessions and the campfires. The Telegram group is also another way of just channeling you to some of the resources we've developed, which we'll talk about in a minute, to try and get some of that that organizing happening beforehand, so that you're well supported before the actual stop happens. Do you want to lead on this one, Brandon?
Okay. Yeah, and I guess just what Claire was talking about is that would have been really good to discuss on our first slide. So we'll make a note of that. But the goal of these information sessions is really to serve as an orientation to help root everybody into the idea of regenerating Earth, and then to kind of give our scaffolding structure for how everybody can plug in. And so the best way to do that is definitely to join the Telegram group. And then down the road, it's also going to be to join the website, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. One of the big things that we're doing for this activation tour is going to be inviting the Design School for Regenerating Earth to come and join us. Specifically, we have three members, Joe Brewer, Penny Heipel, and Benji Ross, who help facilitate and run the Design School. And they also did help host these other bioregional activation tours in the Great Lakes and Colorado River Basin, as well as other places. And the Design School for Regenerating Earth is an online community of people from around North America and around the world who are coming together to explore bioregional activation where they live. And a lot of people are not very familiar with the concept of bioregionalism. And so it's a really nice open space where people can come together, meet, and talk with others to try and get more bioregional frameworks and thinking in their own area. And so there's people exploring bioregional learning centers and bioregionalism, as well as teaching each other other lessons learned. So we're very excited to invite them in.
Yeah, maybe one thing I'm just going to add, I'm realizing as well, just right from the beginning, is just acknowledging that most of the people, most of you on the call are involved in like just incredible work on the ground, and have your own levels of expertise. And we don't come here as the experts at all. We're just helping to connect, trying to connect the dots. So I just wanted to acknowledge the huge potential that we have just in this room. And to say that the design school brings together people like that around the world. And so there's this, it creates this incubation place for the learning that's going on the ground, that then feeds back into, you know, these are things that we just have never really had the scaffolding to do before. We've had bits and pieces of it, but it's about bringing it together. So
yeah, and it also kind of helps serve some really fundamental basic organizing principles for that activation tour and for Regenerate Cascadia as a whole. And one of the most fundamental principles is simply that the land organizes the people. And so what we're doing is in service of what the land needs. And then in addition is this idea of pro-social. So pro-social means that we're coming with the authentic intention to support everybody's work outside of our own. And so really coming with that authentic attitude to help support all of our work, not just one project or another. And in addition, I think some other really simple frameworks that we're working with is this idea of bioregional. We work on the scales of watersheds, ecoregions, and bioregions, because that's kind of the scale that nature also works on. And so our solutions and the solutions that we're talking about, they're bigger than just us, and they can't be confined to arbitrary lines. And so we really work within bioregional frameworks. And in addition, that also kind of leads us to the next principle, which is whole systems thinking. So rather than just one little piece or another, a big goal of this is also to break down the silo of traditional climate, environmental, cultural, community, social justice. It's all interconnected. And so only by looking at that whole system together can we really approach and create the change that we need both for our bioregion and the planet needs.
Yeah, and something that was really important to Joe, Penny, and Benji, who are the people doing the activation tour, is that they were invited by the communities into doing the activation tour. And that started with Victoria, BC. We were one of the groups that invited them in, the Cascadia Department of Bioregion, then also invited them in, and then that set the other stuff in motion. Yeah, I think we're ready for the next one.
Yeah, and that just kind of leads us to this next point, which is that everything that we're doing is replicable and scalable. So this is a very big experiment, and we're all working together. It's a grassroots initiative that's involving dozens, if not hundreds, of organizers around Cascadia, around Pacific Cascadia, Sailor Sea, Willamette Valley. And the lessons that we learned from this tour, we have activation groups in other bioregions around North America and the world, from Lebanon to India to the Great Lakes to Colorado to Appalachia, to organizers on in Texas, and all of them are really watching and learning. And so we're creating this larger, broader infrastructure that's connecting with each other and that's sharing these lessons. And so I think that's also a really important part, is that we're learning and failing together, and we're struggling, and we're hopefully also succeeding together. Oh, I'm sorry. Claire, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think that's good.
Oh, I can go back. Okay. Yeah, and just to give a little bit more background, so the Cascadia Department of Bioregion, I am the executive director for that. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We're a social movement organization, and we are serving as kind of the host or invitee for this broad scale activation tour and summit that's inviting the design school in. And then we are also then working with these local activation teams who are inviting us in service to them and their areas. If you're not familiar with the Department of Bioregion, our mission is for a world of interconnected bioregions and bioregional movements. And beyond just Cascadia, we really want to challenge ourselves and ask ourselves, what are the other bioregions? Who are the on-the-ground organizers? And how can we be better supporting and connecting their work? We take our inspiration from Janella Meadows, author of The Limits of Growth and founder of the Bellatine Group, who in 1982 envisioned a series of centers and departments where information and models about resources and the environment could be housed, and that, in her words, would contain people who with excellent mind and tools, but would not be walled off as scientific centers so often are, either from the lives of ordinary people or from the realities of political processes. The people in these centers would be at home with farmers, miners, planners, the heads of state, and would be able to both listen to and talk to all of them. There would need to be many of these centers all over the world, each one responsible for a discrete bioregion. So we ask all of us here to envision, what would a Department of Bioregion look like? What does that mean? And how can these ideas emerge? For organizers here in this bioregion, our home is Cascadia. We're the primary organization that supports the Cascadia movement, which is a grassroots movement throughout the whole bioregion. And our goal is also to bring in bioregional frameworks that can more effectively represent our watersheds and the realities of the places that we live. Ultimately, our goal is for people to think of themselves as citizens of their watershed rather than arbitrary national identities that are defined by lines that don't represent the people, the ecosystem, or place, and that can often be divisive. We see Cascadia as a gateway movement, and our hope is to empower every person to be active and engaged in the issues they care about, able to walk out their front door to get involved, and be supported in that work with the resources that they need. Oh yeah, go ahead.
So this is the big question: where does the money come from? So all of the work so far has been donated freely in service to the regeneration of Earth. That doesn't mean there aren't real costs, including the living costs of all those donating their time. Working creatively, those of us who have stepped into leadership roles have all found ways to support ourselves thus far. However, this work will require more funding in order to support the coherence of what is required. And yeah, I can walk you through the slide. Brandon, I'm wondering.
Yeah, I think just to call out a few very specific things is the initial funding for this program was that Claire and I submitted an Edge Prize, a proposal for the Salmon Nation Edge Prize in April of this year, and we were able to we won the Systems and Governance category in that, which was a $5,000 grant. And that's all the money that's been raised so far. I think the real costs of doing the tour and summit is going to probably be between $10,000 to $20,000. And so a big part of what we're also doing here is hoping that we can empower every person to kind of be an active, agent for fundraising and stuff. I think one of the cool things, and also another really important thing to note, is that Joe, Penny, and Benji are offering their time freely. They're receiving support that they get through the Design School for Regenerating Earth, and that empowers them to come and be able to offer these workshops free of charge. And so what we're really looking to do is basically raise enough money that can cover the cost of travel expenses. And then we're hoping for assistance with housing and food. And then we have an amazing team of Yeah, like right now they're all volunteers, but like people who are going to be coming on the tour, driving, people who are going to be doing audio and visual, people who are going to be live streaming, people who are going to be helping with social media. Right now we have an incredible team of people with the Blue Dot Project who's helping us build the website. We have people with the Terran Collective who are helping us do like all the branding of it. So this is really a grassroots program, but our goal is to see the creation of long-term regenerative financing ecosystems that can support everybody who's participating in this in an accountable way. And so there is going to be an element of, as we travel, of creating a shared envisioning document where we can start to discuss ideas of governance, of how we allocate funding, and doing that all together. We want this to be a shared, open, and transparent process. So everything that we do is going to be on the website. Our budget is going to be open and on the website. We're going to be tracking our volunteer hours as well as expenses, which will also be on the website. So we're really trying to model a lot of co-budgeting and transparent processes that we also think are really important to bring in as an ethic.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else on that, Claire?
Yeah, just to say that you know, this is to take the work seriously and to the next level. There are conversations going on about actual impact funding and larger scale funding, including convening some of the community foundations and those kinds of questions. So, you know, in order to, like, you know, the world depends on this, the planet depends on this, and we need to take it seriously. So it's just, at different scales, there's different levels of conversation, and all of those are coming in. Yeah.
Great. And then I think, so after the bioregional activation tours, the activation tour will be happening from September 28th to October 30th. We will be in each area for a very short window, and there will be many areas that we're not able to get to. And we don't want to exclude anybody from this process. So one, we're encouraging that if there's a stop near you and you're able to make it, we think that that's really wonderful. Go and connect in with that local organizing team, you know, help make that event, go meet each other. But also we want to invite everybody to what we're kind of calling this activation capstone event, which is that we'll be hosting a bioregional summit that will be online from November 3rd through 12th. And we've been working with Ben Roberts with the Regenerative Communities Network to learn the tools and resources that they used for a global online summit that they held in November of 2022. It was a very inspiring event. It had more than 1,000 people who joined in more than 140 different presentations, workshops, and facilities. And so we looked at that, but we wanted to kind of ground it within our bioregion to the largest extent where we can actually still be physically connected. So kind of having a hybrid online event, but also in which local teams will also be invited to come present. They can host, you know, if people do want to do in-person events, that's also fine. But while the activation tour will be very spread out and we'll be having all of these lessons and discussions and presentations, we want to give everybody an opportunity to come together and share the lessons that we've all learned. And so that's kind of our hope with this bioregional summit. And everyone, and I think, you know, Claire touched on this before, but if you're in this room, we're really leaning in towards community organizers who are active in their area already. And so we want to give everybody the opportunity to come and share the amazing work that they're doing. We also want to start to have some really like specific themed dialogues around ideas like building digital infrastructure. How do we build more effective digital tools? Or the role of community art in a movement building, or it could be also, you know, that the regenerative finance ecosystems or long-term governance. So all of these are different topics that we would like to explore in that kind of 10-day period and window, which we'd like to invite everybody to be a part of.
Yeah, and just before you do move on, I just wanted to call out, I know that Larry Green, you've got like media and podcasts are a big part of what some of those conversations. There are lots that has been coming up just because of the having put ourselves out there, that we know that the activation tour isn't like can't possibly handle all of the very important themes and resources that are starting to come forward. And so some of them, especially the digital network, it's going to require a bigger conversation. So actually having those a place to channel those conversations is very important. So I just wanted to bring that in.
So, and then I think another really important element of this is we really want to map and visualize who we're working with. We want to remove ourselves as bottleneck and visualize the other people who are already active and engaged in this work. So while we're doing an activation tour and summit, the third part of this is that we will be creating a social movement map, and we're going to do that using WordPress and Kumu. That as we're joining, we'll be able to see who we are, where we're located, and then we'll be able to connect together by location, by interest, and then also organizations that we might be affiliated with. And so we're hopefully going to also be mapping the regenerative work happening throughout the Cascadia bioregion, and also in a functional way that we can actually use.
Yeah, just maybe just to add a little bit to that, just it allows for a level of transparency. It helps to retain agency of the diverse groups on the ground doing that. And really importantly, as we get organized, it's going to be really important that a movement that starts to feel powerful cannot just be co-opted. So putting in place the tools for that distributed leadership is really important.
Yeah, and then I think so just after this, so our next step that we think is really important will be documenting the lessons that are learned. And so a big inspiration that came out of this was both looking at the Edge Prize, it was looking at this global summit, and it's looking at other events that accumulate like tremendous amount of like energy and excitement while people are there. But that oftentimes then maybe like they don't have the scaffolding to keep that energy and momentum going. And so we want to really center the pre-activation and the post-activation as much as we do these events themselves. The point of the Regenerate Cascadia is not the event. It's to keep the events going and the energy going after this. So really using this time to co-create those lessons and then to share and document it with everybody. So everybody who takes part, everybody who participates, we want to take these lessons and knowledges and we want to put them together in a proceeding. So either harvesting or gleaning that information, as well as starting to put together a shared coherent vision and document. This is really inspired by the early Cascadia bioregional congresses that happened in the 1980s. As well as like Planet Drums, Raise the Stake, where they had this amazing like connection of where you can actually like physically read all of these different lessons. And in addition to physical copies, we also want to make sure that these are being recorded, live streamed, documented, and then made freely available to everybody who might want to use them for whatever purpose that might be, whether it's a podcast, a YouTube, and all of these other things.
Yeah, and yeah.
Yep.
No, that's good.
It's okay.
Yeah. We're trying not to throw too much loads of stuff at you.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, so in the theme of throwing way too much information at you, we just wanted to touch on this is part of a long-term vision. This is not the goal, again, is not this one event. It's about co-creating the processes so that we can start to map the energy from these one-time events with our day-to-day work in a way that empowers all of us. So we hope that this will be the start of ideas like design labs, which can explore those digital tools and ecosystems and art, and what other things we might want to see, which can more effectively like kind of tie our work together. We hope that this will also be the start that these place-based local activation teams can also help connect in as watershed hubs as part of either like a watershed or eco-regional or bioregional framework, so that to either increase connection in a local place, increase connection in a watershed, or within the Salish Sea or Willamette Valley, or even more broadly in that bioregional level. We hope that these can be interconnective tissues that can support all of our work and really like not in a pro-social way. So without it being like kind of taken over by any one group or person, it's really supporting all of our work. One of our big goals to come out of this is we'd really love it to turn into more of a long-term governance, to kind of harken back to the 1980s and how the Cascadia movement was even born, and that term was born, is it was through years of bioregional congresses that they had. And we'd love to start to talk about creating effective decision-making bodies that can steward, make choices, help allocate funding, and support projects as determined by local groups, and in the best way that local groups find important. Long term, one of the other components that's really important, and this is actually something that Joe is really spearheading and taking a really big lead on, is connecting this in with a regenerative finance ecosystem. So we want to take these hubs or like little groups that we're creating, and we want to connect that with like actual funding, like money to see people supported with the resources they need, that can kind of almost serve as intermediaries that help connect that funding in a transparent way that we get to co-create. And then local groups can disperse that out to the land-based projects that, they'll know their needs best. And so, yeah. Claire, would you like to step in on this?
Yeah, maybe just to talk about the finance piece, is just what has been really heartening in the conversations we've been having in the design school is the naming of the weavers, of the landscape weavers, that those are really, really critical roles and have traditionally not had funding. And that when, as discussion goes forward with putting impact funding packages together and starting to name two major funders, it's just the conversation is these are the people that actually need to be resourced so that they can actually focus on weaving the projects that are already, the work that's already going on together. So yeah, that I just wanted to highlight that's yeah, I think that's good. So yeah, so just to give a better context of where all of this came from, Regenerate Cascadia started as a collaboration. We've kind of hinted at a bunch of this, but I'm just going to say it, pull it together here. Started as a collaboration between Brandon and myself during the 2023 Edge Prize, which was an initiative hosted by Salmon Nation and the Terrain Collective and Hilo, and designed to bring a community of edge walkers, weavers on the edge of different communities, but tied to the whole, to share open source Indigenous knowledge for a more resilient world. There were more than 140 edge walkers from around the Cascadia bioregion who met for 8 weeks to explore place-based bioregional regeneration, to tell their stories and practice working cooperatively to distribute funding to regenerative projects. Much of the on-the-ground work needed for bioregional regeneration is being done in our communities, as we've said, but too often the work is siloed and not connected. And it was during the Edge Prize that Brandon and I recognized that mapping and empowering the work already happening was what was missing. We saw a huge opportunity through catalysts such as the Activation Tour and the Regenerative Communities Network Summit to help weave a network that might regenerate Cascadia. And yeah, and then we've worked, you know, since then to develop it out. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Brandon.
No, I think that's great. And I think just to add, it's been amazing to see how many people have stepped in so far. When we were in April, we're like, oh man, we have so much time. And boy, how does time fly? And so everything is still in a very rough draft state. But I think what's really wonderful is by opening it up in the way that we have, it's something that we're all creating together. And that's like a really, really powerful thing. And I think we already touched on this, but and Ben Roberts was one of the organizers. He wasn't the organizer, but he's certainly who we have worked with since the Edge Prize. And I think the Edge Prize, as Claire talked about, was really, Claire had invited Joe to come to speak at Victoria. And then we had also all participated in this global summit. And so it really was taking a lot of the lessons that was happening from these activation tours and these summits and really wanting to piece all of those things together to explore what are the lessons that we can take away, how can we make these stronger, and then really how can we take this energy that is so powerful while we're in that moment and really and keep it building and keep it weaving, and then also remove ourselves as bottlenecks, because a lot of times these are organized by really small teams of people, really fast turnaround, and then that scaffolding isn't there. So how can we really open it up in the pre-activation to for that long-term impact?
Just hang on 2 seconds before you go off from that. To mitigate us being bottlenecks, we've developed a Google sheet that can be found through the master document that's pinned at the top of the Telegram group. So if you haven't signed up for that, it would be good to do that. But the Google sheet is to try and capture some of the themes surfacing that require further development for the summit. So if you know, these will provide some of the things that are coming out that will be developed in the summit will become the scaffolding that will support this work. So anyway, there's a place for you to go and add to that, so that
yeah, and we'll have slides on how to get involved and all that in a little bit too. But really, so from that global summit, we really took another design challenge, which is how do we take these amazing events, and yeah, I've already touched on this a lot. So really, how do we connect it and keep it, and then connect it better with our day-to-day work? Speaking of what Claire was just talking about, I think so now we're going to shift a little bit more to like how to actually be involved. That's a lot of the background. The three main tools that we're using right now are Telegram, and we have a few different levels there. So it's a Telegram group, and there's like a lot of different threads. The way that we've set it up is so that every local activation team has their own channel. That's for the local activation teams and to communicate, to meet each other, and hopefully to connect with one another. Every local activation team has the autonomy of their own organizing. So they have the ultimate say. We will set some basic ground rules and principles from that bioregional level, but really past that, you know, like it's up to each team. So we can make suggestions. And I think it's wonderful that people should. It's our hope that people will say, reach out with so-and-so, or I know this group and this person. And that's really great. And then it's up to that local team of actually figuring out the calendar of what's going to happen while we're kind of going through. If you'd like to make a suggestion, like Claire was just saying, the Google Drive is pinned. The link to the Google Drive document is pinned in the Telegram group. It's a table of contents Word document or Google document. And there's a couple different things there. One is a contact sheet. If you're going to sign up, if you've joined the Telegram group, please add your contact information to the contact sheet. name, email, phone number. The second sheet in that Google document is also for suggestions. Feel free to like start throwing up all the people that we should reach out with, other events, other things that might not be in your own area. So if you know of people who are like, oh, I know a great person in Bellingham and I'm in Seattle, add it to the suggestion sheet so that they can see it. Because things are going to get lost in the Telegram group. It's just going to happen. So it's a good operating assumption that if it's not in the Google Drive or on that sheet, it doesn't exist. We'll also have a sheet for, we'd like everybody to really think about if they'd like to give a presentation for the Bioregional Summit. It's very open. It's going to be an open space format. So choose a time and day that works for you. We're going to have several different themes, but think about, you know, if you're here, you're probably doing something amazing. So think about what you might like to talk about. The last thing that we will say is that we are going to be developing a privacy policy. So I think the way that we're working is that everybody's contact information will be available to other organizers. It will not be available to the public, but it still will be pretty public. So please be aware of that. And then each local group will be able to maintain their own email list, which will be private. So some of that we'll actually write up as a policy, and we will ask people to agree to it, just so that we can make sure that we're like not going to abuse people's information. Someone's not going to take it and send it off or something like that. And then for local organizers themselves, we're going to have a whole little organizer tools area. Local activation teams will work with to develop like kind of like a memo of understanding that just kind of outlines expectations. And we go through that with each team. And it's a great thing to say, what are we responsible for? What are you responsible for? And we're actually using the Bread and Puppets MOU from when they did a really fun tour recently where they traveled around in a bus. So it was a very fitting kind of application. We're also going to share the PowerPoint. We have a rough draft of the orientation and kind of like a handbook that we're starting to put together. And then we also want to share an open communications and media folder, which will have images, press release stuff, and especially as we develop it. So Claire, do you have anything else you'd like to add there?
Yeah, just to say, like we're still developing all of this stuff. It's as good as we've been able to get it right now, but it's work in progress. So if you've got, I think Brandon's already asked for that, but yeah, bear with us with the stuff that's missing. And if you can see obvious omissions, like really, we welcome your feedback on that. And yeah, maybe just especially the media, developing that. If you do, yeah, we'll bring some of the stuff up in the following information session. So,
Yeah, and I think so just with that, there'll be a little bit of like a group values and agreement. We want to make sure that like we're not like we're gonna have pretty hard lines on like not working with racist groups or white supremacists or other things. So there's some basic values, the bioregional ones, so that we're not like promoting like a political party or, you know, XYZ pet project. And then I think we'll also in the future we'll have some type of coordination kit, which is also like what we can help set up a group with and how we're like structuring things. We don't have that yet. So, and you are all welcome to help us make it if you have the time. What I will also add is that right now we are working out of a Google Drive. We will be working through the website in probably about a week. And so we have a really amazing team of people who are helping us get kind of like to update the website, get a different theme going, and then kind of connect our back end. And when it's live, we're going to shift our organizing platforms. We'll be using Telegram and then the website rather than a Google Drive. And everything will just be in the back end. You'll sign up. You'll have access to organizer tools. You'll see like the MOU, the media kit, all the rest of it. And then people will also be able to add events to the calendar, submit things for the summit, and then also posting meeting report backs. And that'll be a really important part of helping us track volunteer hours and how many volunteers we're working with. And so all of that will be able to be done through the back end of our website.
and I'll just say, one of the things that we've been using in terms of terminology is that the website, we've referred to the design school for Regenerating Earth, and there is a close relationship that's actually being really worked out as to how some of those, like, how do we do this dance together with all of the different groups? And we started using the terminology, the front door, the website being the front door, that so that people didn't get lost in all of the different groups that we're talking about, and then can navigate from their landscapes into what they're needing, so that there is a natural flow and you're not missing things. So just, if we've kind of overwhelmed you with this presentation so far, hopefully you can kind of see the logic coming through the website.
Yeah, and we'll just add to that, like, the website right now is like, the purpose of it is for organizers. It's not for the general public. We're really interested in connecting with the people who are going to be hosting local activation teams. But as we kind of move forward, especially into September, we're going to shift that, and then the website will become the portal for all of these events and activities. So it'll be a one-stop shop for being able to find information about events happening in Portland and in Bellingham, as well as a schedule for the summit. So yeah, and we're really trying to we're trying to get the back end of the website set up this week. You'll notice some really substantial changes to it in about probably a week to 10 days. And at that point, we'll make a general announcement, and then we'll start shifting away from the drive to the website. And then as we get closer to the actual activation tour, the website will start to shift as people kind of get these like actual events locked in. And then it'll become an interface for the public. And so people can RSVP and sign up and do all the rest of that and find information about each local stop. Organizers from the back end, one of the big things is that you'll be able to add information. You'll be able to add yourself. You'll be able to add an organization that you're connected with. And that we're using this both in Kumu and the WordPress to build like directories. So you can add calendars for all of these other amazing events that are happening, that are like either before or after the activation tour, but you think it's like really important. You can like put event report backs. That's also going to be really important for the event itself, is that we really want to collect stories and evaluation forms and really document how this event went, so that we can capture those lessons and share it with other bioregions. Yeah, and then also you'll be able to find all of our communications and media, the budget admin stuff, any tracking forms, that'll all be on the website too. So again, not yet, about a week, but we're getting there, and that's exciting. You want to lead us off on this one, Claire?
Yeah, I think a lot of this we've already covered, but so yeah, host. Oh God, I keep losing this on my screen. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right.
It's jumping around here.
Okay. Well, I think the main thing is just there's like, so at its most simple, there's just there's three different things. There's going to be the activation tour, the bioregional summit, and then kind of how we interact on the website. So what are we asking of organizers or people who are kind of stepping on? And we have already kind of touched on this, I think, but for local activation teams, it's really that you plan what's happening while we're there. And then each different place will be responsible for organizing housing and food. And honestly, if you're just not able to do that, that's also okay. Like, you know, we're all going to be working together to do this. And we are happy to help if any of this is falling through or it becomes overwhelming. And that's all good. And really, it's up to every local team to just organize awesome events. We're going to promote it out as much as we can, and we ask that and hope that you will also promote it out as much as you can. And then all of these events, none of these events will be charged. And so what we will do is just kind of hopefully do it by like kind of by donation with no one turned away due to cost. And hopefully we're just kind of planning to try and fundraise in that method as well as other grants and other in-kind contributions that we can get. For the summit itself, yeah, think about hosting a presentation, share the work that you're doing. We want every individual group or community that's participating to be a part of this event. For the local activation teams, we'd also really love to think about you presenting as a local team at some point during the summit. We'd love for you to share to other local activation teams. We'd love for you to like connect with each other, talk about lessons, and then we'd like to have some theme discussions around general envisioning and kind of talking about what's next, specifically for the participants and organizers. And then, yeah, on the website when it's ready, we'll be asking people to register as an organizer. A big part of that, again, is like that privacy policy so that we can make sure that we're keeping all of our own information private and that we are trying to build networks of trust. And then we invite everybody to add events and planning meetings to the calendar. This can be for the activation tour. This can also be for like during the tour. This can be for before the tour. But if you're doing something really important, if you know of an event that's really important, some type of convergence or something that's happening, even if it's not like on one of our stops, we would really like to make this a calendar of regenerative work happening. So yeah, it's just an open invitation.
Yeah, so this is just kind of a summary of everything that we've already been referencing. So yeah, join our Telegram group if you haven't. And there's 2 there.
Yeah, just to be specific, so the Telegram organizing group, if you're not familiar with Telegram, that's where we're going to have a lot of interactivity and planning. It's where we're meeting with each other and everybody, all the different groups are meeting. A Telegram channel is going to be, is just a public interface. It's more like a Facebook page where we can post updates and people can interact with the updates, but they cannot share into it. So as we get closer to the actual event, we're going to start kind of hiding our Telegram organizing group a little bit more. And our process for inviting people in will be to invite them to an orientation session or to have a one-on-one so that they have some familiarity with what we're doing. Then we'll invite them to the Telegram group. Local organizers are welcome to invite people from their area to come to the Telegram group. But when we get closer to the actual event itself, we'll switch the public facing media to the Regenerate Cascadia channel. And that'll just be for posting updates. So that'll be like, Portland has confirmed that we're doing, this, or, this bioregional mapping workshop will be on this day, or here's a new article, or, come to our next information session. So, yeah, that's kind of the difference there. So, yeah, and I think we're just at 7:02, so we're kind of at our cap. So I think what I'd like to do now is I'm going to stop the recording, and we can kind of transition more into a campfire mode where we get to kind of we can definitely like open it up for some of these questions, and then give a little bit more space for all of us to introduce each other on our work and all the rest of that. So let me stop sharing the screen.
Yeah, so that's loads